I really feel like for Allie, she's part of what I call is like the American Christian persecution complex. They almost want to be persecuted. Hey friends, welcome back to the YouTube channel, or maybe you're listening to this on our podcast. Either way, thank you for being here. Great to be with you. On this response video, I want to watch with you the trailer for Allie Beth Stuckey's in-person event called Share the Arrows. Now, maybe you're new to the channel or you're new to the podcast and you're not sure who Allie Beth Stuckey is. Allie Stuckey is one of the largest right-wing commentators in existence right now. She has hundreds of thousands of subscribers and followers on all of her social media channels. She has a podcast that routinely ranks in the charts. She's very influential. She's 32 years old, so about 3 years younger than me, and is very much someone who would come out of the more reformed evangelical perspective. So think Calvinism, God predestined people to go to heaven kind of view. And she also is very much in the camp of Christian nationalism regarding her political views. In fact, she's been one of the loudest voices that have been outspoken against things like IVF, which is kind of it's really a new calling or a new canary in the coal mine kind of attitude that people like Allie are having towards IVF, which is interesting, and we'll get into that later on. But yeah, so anyway, that's kind of who she is, and she's doing this in-person event. The first one ever, I think, that is hosted by her and some special guests, which we'll unpack. And I watched the trailer for this, and I just found it so fascinating for so many reasons. And what I wanted to do in this video was go through the trailer with you, and kind of respond to some of the claims that she's making, expose for you how Christian nationalism plays a role in all of this and how we see Christian nationalist ideals in this video, and then talk about the guests that she's bringing with her at this one-day event. So there's a lot here, a lot to unpack, and I'm really excited to do it with you. Before I do, thank you for being here. If you like this video, if you like what you see and hear, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you have any thoughts as we're going through, please put them in the comments. I do read comments. I do see them, and I really enjoy hearing your thoughts and perspective on all of this. So the trailer for this event is about 2.5 minutes long. Let's go through it kind of piece by piece. I want to address a few things that she talks about, and then we'll go from there. So without further ado, here we go.
Like most moms, I find myself worrying about the world my children will grow up in. The America of my childhood was patriotic, hardworking, and family-focused. Yes, we had our challenges, but nothing like what we face today.
Okay, let's stop right there. Let's stop right there for a second. She sets it up already as this mythical past where when she was young, things were really simple. People were patriotic, they were hardworking, and family-focused. Those are the three words that she uses. And a lot of Allie's mantra on her social media accounts is how we're facing a moment of cultural decay. Things are worse than they were back then when Allie and I were both children. So I decided, why don't we just fact check a few of those claims? She talks about how people back then were hardworking. So something I wanted to pull up, which I did, is labor. Let's look at labor. So what I did for this was I asked ChatGPT first. I said, hey, can you give me a chart on the average or how many hours people work in the US starting in 1990. So as we see this chart from ChatGPT, the rates have gone up over time. About 1,835 hours in 1990 compared to 1,860 hours in 2022. So essentially Americans are working an extra week now. They're actually working harder than ever before. And given how our current purchasing power is actually lower than it's been in the past, Americans have to work more hours to keep up. And in fact, I did want to fact check GPT because let's face it, AI can be a little tricky, not always trustworthy. So the New York Times did a report and they said, quote, the report issued by the International Labor Organization found that Americans added nearly a full week to their work year during the 1990s, climbing to 1,979 hours on average last year, up 36 hours from 1990. That means Americans who are employed are putting in nearly 49 and a half weeks a year on the job. So right away, we can see that actually today, Americans are more hardworking than they've been in Allie and I's childhood. So I just wanted to bring attention to that. We're already kind of starting off on, hey, back then people were hardworking and family focused and they were patriotic, and we'll unpack that in a bit. But already we can see, well, it's not exactly the case. Americans are working harder today. One more thing I wanted to bring up in this early intro, I know it's only the beginning, but I did want to look at family. Like, what are the marriage rates currently, right? Because again, we hear a lot of language from this right-wing world from people saying how marriage is on the decline and the family unit is being erased by insert fear tactic here. And so here's the actual rates. As you can see, since 1965, marriage rates have been decreasing. This says the number of marriages in the past year per 1,000 unmarried women. And then you can see, like, most recently, it actually took a little spike up. So even in Allie's childhood, the rates of marriage were declining in a lot of ways. So again, it's not like back then was so much better than what it is now. It's just not that simple. So I wanted to point that out because this video is important, as we're going to see as it unfolds. It's very much juxtaposing this past where things were great compared to the reality now. So let's keep going.
There was no confusion over whether boys can become girls. We could visit the library and go to school without worrying about being force-fed politics.
I'm sorry. If you're listening to this, so far the images are like of kids at Blockbuster, and right now it's a photo of, or a video of Full House. Are kids being forced to do what Allie just claimed? I mean, let's back it up for a minute and listen one more time, and let's really examine this claim. Let's back it up.
We could visit the library and go to school without worrying about being force-fed politics or sexual themes.
Okay, I'm just curious for Allie, how a child would go to a library and be force-fed sexual themes. Is a librarian holding down a child and bringing them into the adult section to read books that are designed for either teenagers or adults? Is that what's happening here? Is someone tying a child down and forcing them to look at pictures or something? Again, like, there's this narrative from Allie that our children today are under attack. And she says this a lot on her Twitter and on her other channels. And the way that the proof of this is that kids are being forced to deal with sexual themes at libraries and at schools. Sex ed is appropriate. We need sex ed. Man, if you grew up in purity culture, you know we need sex ed. So that's not what we're talking about here. And as far as, again, the library goes, I would love to get an example of a librarian who is holding down children and making them read sexually explicit material. So not really sure where we're going with this.
Our cities were safer and more vibrant.
Oh, interesting.
We were moving into a world in which people prioritized the content of someone's character over the color of their skin, their class, or their political affiliation.
Okay, I know I'm pausing a lot, but we have to. Allie talks about how our cities were safer back then. Let me just give you, again, I had ChatGPT do an analysis on data for New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Houston. Crime is down in all of those cities from 1990 until now. It's actually safer now than it was when Allie was a child. In fact, I have other data on this too, because again, we want to make sure we're being as factual as we can. Crime rates per 100,000 starting in 1990 to 2022. Again, you see a massive dive. We started in 1990 at 729 cases of violent crime per 100,000 people, and we're now down to 385.2 as of 2021. So, once again, Allie's painting this picture that back then our cities were so safe and vibrant, and now they are just really dangerous and crime-ridden when the data doesn't show that. That's not, of course, to dismiss real crime that still happens today. Of course, we want our cities safer. I live very close to Philadelphia. Philadelphia as a city has experienced a major spike in homicides due to gun violence. So, of course, those are bad things. I don't want to make it seem like somehow we're living in an ideal state. Of course we're not. But to paint this broad brush that back then we were safe and now we're not is just not congruent with the data, and that's important. The other thing she mentions is talking about how we didn't judge people on the basis of their skin or their class or their political affiliation. I don't know what world Allie grew up in the 90s. Rodney King happened in the 90s, Allie. The LA riots happened in the 90s. I'm not sure what she's referring to here. I'm just not. I also grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh as a child in the 90s and early 2000s. right-wing media, talk radio, their only job was to divide Americans based on political affiliation. I remember listening as a child or as really a teenager to people like Sean Hannity and Rush and others, and I realized one day I was painting in someone's house. I used to work in construction, and I'm thinking, they've never given Obama credit for anything, and we're 6 years now into his presidency. Obviously, he has to do something good for us to still be here, and that's when I started to realize that actually, I think there's more going on than what Allie claims is that, well, we didn't judge people by their political affiliation. And what she did was she her editor pulled a clip of George Bush throwing the first pitch in Yankee Stadium after 9/11. Surely a unifying moment. What I'm not going to say is that today's political climate is somehow less divisive. Clearly with Trump, and we'll unpack that later on, with Trump and others, we've only seen a further divide. So yes, we have had moments of unification. For sure, there was wide bipartisan support to invade Iraq, for example, much to our chagrin today. But there was a narrative in right-wing media for decades, especially during the 90s, that the Democrats, or as Rush Limbaugh would call them, the feminazis, this is language that he would use, are destroying the country. So, yeah. Again, don't know what she's talking about here. It's very weird to see her try and paint this picture that back then was so much better and today is so much worse. But we'll keep going. We'll keep unpacking it.
But we don't live in that world anymore.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Dark language.
The age we occupy now is wrought with confusion and chaos. We face threats to security everywhere we look.
Okay, right now she's showing images of immigration. So this is a very classic talking point for the right-wing media. They love to build this narrative that there is an army of quote-unquote illegal immigrants invading our country. Now, many things are true at the same time. America has a serious immigration problem, and the problem is because both Democrats and Republicans don't really want to seem to fix what needs to be fixed. Now, we've had people on the show discussing this. Okay, you can go to our previous podcast or YouTube episodes to hear the deep dive about immigration and how we can actually solve it that keeps the humanity of the migrants in mind. But this notion that we're being invaded by criminals, which Allie often pushes from her Twitter along with other people, is patently false. In fact, the Cato Institute did a study and found that immigrants, even ones who were undocumented, were half as likely to commit violent crime compared to their counterparts who are legal citizens, so to speak. So this narrative that, as Trump would say, Mexico isn't sending their best, they're sending their drug cartels. While certainly no one wants drugs or cartels or anyone who wants to do ill will coming into the country, of course, to make it seem like that's the reason why this is happening right now is not the case. There's a lot of movement happening because of things like global warming. This is all data. You can look it up. Global warming is a major factor. Also, we need to acknowledge that the U.S. is not really known for, stabilizing countries that they have an interest in. They tend to destabilize them. So a lot of this is really even because of our own empire and our own imperialism in other countries. But again, for Allie, this is a great talking point for her base because the average white soccer mom who listens to her has this built-in fear that people who don't look like them, these brown-skinned immigrants, are invading the country and trying to come after our kids and after our children. So this is why she's pointing to this imagery while saying that, we don't live in the world that Allie grew up in that was so safe and secure and beautiful and vibrant.
War, lawlessness, depraved indoctrination, bloodthirst, division.
Wow. Okay, I gotta laugh here. So in the images that were flashed across the screen, it showed, I believe, it was a man in drag. I think it was a drag queen. It showed President Biden talking when she said the word division, and then Dylan Mulvaney. That is truly hilarious to me. It's hilarious that, and I'm not surprised, that she's not going to put up a picture of Trump. I mean, the most divisive president to ever maybe walk the face of our planet, at least in our lifetime for sure. A man who, from the beginning, was known for his bullying tactics. A man who had no problem calling his political enemies all kinds of names, who insisted that there was some deep state cabal trying to subvert the election to keep him out. I mean, Trump is, for so many reasons, the explosion in the country that has divided so many people. Even as we come off the end of his trial where he's now a convicted felon, and we've covered this before on the podcast and on the show, it's white evangelicals who are pushing a false narrative that somehow he's innocent. and that the deep state's coming after him, and this is all political stunt. So Allie is going to use people that she thinks are dividing the country, even though it's not actually steeped in fact. How is Dylan Mulvaney dividing the country? She's just living and people like her, and so she's being platformed. And for Allie, just her being in the public limelight is too much to handle. Just too much. Same thing for queer rights. The fact that queer, trans, gay, lesbian, bisexual folks exist and are being recognized and maybe even have Pride Month, a month that celebrates their humanity and dignity, that is too much for Allie. Too much. So for her and for people like her, those people are dividing the country. Okay. Ironic. I mean, let's not forget the insurrection on January 6th, when a bunch of Christians with Christian flags and Christian images and Christian prayers thanked Jesus for the opportunity to storm the Capitol and tried to hang the vice president, tried to find Nancy Pelosi, and tried to subvert our election process. But yes, it is the queer people who are dividing the country, Allie. Yes, absolutely.
And there are moments when we just want to go back.
Go back to what?
Back to the days of our childhood, when things were simpler, better. But there's no going back.
Okay, so there we go. I mean, there's the juxtaposition. Hey, we want to go back to when we were children and things were simple. I mean, and my friend April brought this up when we talked about it on the show a few weeks ago. When you're a child, everything is more simple by default. Of course, Allie, her and I are only 3 years apart. Of course, when we were 11 or 13 or 10, things were more simple. Of course, we weren't aware of what was happening. We weren't aware of the injustices that were happening in our society. I think it's also important to point out that this is very much a key ingredient of Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism is built on a mythological past that we have to return to. This is why Make America Great Again is the slogan for Trump. But the question is, what time are we going back to, and who's benefiting in that time? Some people think we should go back to the 1950s. What, when segregation was a thing? When lynchings were a thing? When queer people couldn't even say that they're queer? Interesting. The 1970s? When people like Bob Jones and Jerry Falwell were fighting integration tooth and nail? I mean, what time do you want to go back to? Now, we could argue that, hey, economically back then, when the minimum wage actually meant something and a family could survive off of one person's full-time income, I can see how those ingredients are good to go back to for sure. But Allie's not talking about that. She's talking about this cultural moment when, in her mind, Christianity or family values were prominently on display compared to now. But as we just demonstrated in this video so far, it's not actually true. It's just not. And for other people groups in America, it's especially not true. And it's still not true today. So, okay, juxtaposition. Allie's setting this up. This is for a conference she's doing. Back then, things were good. We have all this cultural decay, but we can't go back, is what she last said. And now we're moving forward. So she is in her studio, and now we're going somewhere else.
There's only 4.
Ooh.
We have no choice
Megachurch.
but to face the challenges of our day head on. And we can. Because we serve a God who placed us here right now on purpose. God knew the exact obstacles you and I would face. And just as he has for every generation of Christians, he will equip us.
Okay, so for Allie, this is kind of where some of her Calvinism and really God's sovereignty comes in, right? This is pretty evangelical language. God has placed us, and by us, she means Christians, not everyone, but God has placed us here for a special time, and God will equip us. For her, Christians are very limited. We're not talking about the wide swath of Christian thinking. We're not talking about Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, Protestants, progressive Protestants. No. We're talking about very specific people, mostly white evangelical folks or folks who would assimilate into her quote unquote biblical hermeneutic regarding things like penal substitutionary atonement, which believes that Jesus bore the wrath of God for our sins, right? So this is not a wide approach to Christianity. This is a very narrow approach. And of course, and Allie has said this, if you have certain political viewpoints, like for example, if you're pro-choice, not pro-life, you probably aren't a real Christian. So for her, politics are completely intertwined to her worldview, and therefore the worldview that all Christians are to have. Okay, so now we're in a megachurch. Interesting move for Allie, because she critiques megachurch pastors often, but now we're in a megachurch.
Jesus has given us not a spirit of fear, but of power and courage. Courage to stand up against the enemy and to share the arrows with other Christians who serve as a refuge of clarity and courage.
Okay. Let's pause it right there for 1 second. Interesting. First off, my question to her is, who's the enemy? Right? This is a very ambiguous term that it's kind of like the term woke now, which we all know is appropriated, okay, from black culture to this white conservative nonsense. But now the term woke has really become what? Like, how do you define it? Same thing with this word enemy. Who's the enemy? Is it this spiritual entity, Satan, or the Satan? Is it a demonic force? Is it Democrats, or as some people call it, Demoncrats? I mean, what are we talking about? I would venture to assume that for Allie, the enemy is anyone who gets in her way. Anyone who gets in the way of people who hold the views that she holds. So if you're pro-IVF, you're the enemy. If you are pro-queer rights, you're the enemy. If you are a Democrat, you're the enemy. If you're a progressive Christian, you're the enemy. If you are, a moderate Catholic, you're probably the enemy. That's my best guess. Regarding who she's talking about. So the name of this event, if you didn't hear it, is Share the Arrows. So sorry, I'm not trying to be rude in this video, but it just is so interesting to watch a white woman who is probably worth, I'm going to guess, $1 million or more. Massive platform, massive. I'm assuming, by the way, is the breadwinner in her family, which is a different conversation. Really call an event Share the Arrows as if she's under such terrible persecution. What arrows are being thrown at you? Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about people on the internet who would send her death threats or dehumanize her. Obviously, those things are terrible. That happens to people on the internet, period. And it's wrong every time. But that's not like a unique thing that Allie has to struggle with. That just happens to popular media figures who are in the public limelight. Again, it's not right. It's wrong. I would never endorse that. It is bad. Don't do that. People who are watching, do not be that person. But that's not a unique thing. But I really feel like for Allie, and I say this because I hear it a lot, she's part of what I call is like the American Christian persecution complex, right? These people who, they almost want to be persecuted. They want to pretend that somehow they're the ones underneath the thumb of secular culture, when in reality, they have their own industries. Allie is on a very popular right-wing media networks podcast that is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, as far as I'm aware, maybe at least tens of millions. She has probably a very lucrative contract. She's well known. She writes books. She tours the country speaking. She probably makes a good chunk of change. But for her, this event's called Share the Arrows because life is so tough because queer people have Pride Month, and Allie has to suffer through it. It's wild to me.
An age of chaos, cowardice, and confusion.
All right, she changed clothes. She's wearing the power suit.
If you're a Christian woman, you're invited to my Share the Arrows event, where you will be emboldened by some of the most important Christian voices of our day: Rosaria Butterfield, Elisa Childers, and Abby Halberstadt. You'll get to worship.
Okay, pause. I don't know Abby Halberstadt a whole lot. I definitely know Rosaria Butterfield and Elisa Childers. In fact, if you have not yet watched my deep dive with Matthew Vines on Rosaria Butterfield, I so recommend it. TLDR, too long, didn't read. That's what it means for all of you out there. Rosaria Butterfield used to be what is known as a political lesbian, and now is of the persuasion in right-wing fundamentalist spaces, saying that even Christians who are gay, who would identify as gay and be celibate, so this is called a Psi-B Christian, all right? It's someone who would say, yes, I am gay or I'm lesbian, but I don't act on those quote-unquote urges, and I choose celibacy. Rosaria Butterfield would say that person is still in sin because they identify as queer in some way, shape, or form. That's how extreme Rosaria is. And Elisa Childers is right beside her, platforming Rosaria and saying, yes, absolutely. This is absolutely the move. These two are maybe as, well, not as fundamentalist as you can get, but they are quite on the fundamentalist end. These are folks who, they're not looking for like the good faith dialogue. They're not even moderate conservative evangelicals. They are very much steeped in a fundamentalist biblical inerrancy perspective that would tell, in particular, queer people that even to say I'm a side B Christian would be to acknowledge that you are in sin. When Rosaria Butterfield was asked, what do gay Christians do? She said, quote, go back in the closet. Yeah, that's who Allie's working with. And ironically, Alisa Childers, who does work in the Christian nationalist space through other people like her and this guy named Frank Turek, who's an apologist, he'll come on her show. This is really, for me, as far as I can think of, or as far as I can think back, this is her first real public, like, political event, because Allie Stuckey is very much in the political world. So this is just very, I can't say I'm surprised, but it is telling. It is telling to watch this conservative evangelical world baked or steeped in fundamentalism now partner with Allie Stuckey, who is very much steeped in the Christian nationalist world, and just say, you know what, let's have an event together called Share the Arrows, because, you know, culture's coming for us. Yeah, wow, amazing.
Worship with Grammy Award-winning artist Francesca Battistelli and fellowship with like-minded Christian conservative women from all walks of life. By God's grace, we can take on this battle.
What battle?
Sharing the arrows our opponents aim at us. Together.
Wow, okay. Share in the arrows our opponents aim at us. Wow, yeah, mind-blowing. Blows my mind. What battle are you in, Allie? Like, really? Is someone knocking down your door, trying to take away your Bibles, trying to stop you from attending a church that would hold views that I would find abhorrent? Is someone trying to take you away from your husband and turn you into a lesbian woman and making you get married to another woman? Is someone trying to force you to undergo some kind of gender-affirming surgery? I mean, no one's doing this. What battle are we talking about? I really want to know, for these people, what battle? Now, here's my best guess. It's the battle for culture. The fact that other people and other perspectives that are not like theirs are in the public limelight. The fact that there are TV shows with queer representation, or that there are people out there who would acknowledge that other folks who are not like me or like Allie, meaning my black neighbors, my indigenous neighbors, etc. Maybe that there have been systemic issues, systemic attempts to marginalize their rights, their voices that still affect them today. For me to even acknowledge that for Allie is a problem. For a country to acknowledge that we're still reeling, we're still dealing with the effects of hundreds of years of slavery and lynching and Jim Crow, and that it doesn't just go away overnight, and that actually maybe part of the reality is American history is built on white supremacy. For Allie, oh, that's woke. It's too far. So this is not, for Allie, she sees anything that is a challenge to her and that also wants equity in the public square as an attack on her, because I think deep down, and I am speculating, but I do think deep down, Allie believes that this nation was made for Christians like her. This is a Christian country, it's our country, and everyone else is just a visitor. And if they don't assimilate into this perspective, they're actually the enemy. And now I'm under attack. I think that's where this battle language comes from, because in lived reality, Allie's under no such threat. There's no government threat coming after her. She is free to worship how she chooses. She is free to say what she wants on the internet. She has a massive platform. Apple Podcasts hosts her all the time. You know, like that's where her podcast lives. She's on YouTube. Big tech companies that she claims are trying to silence conservative voices gladly push her stuff to her audience and make ad revenue off of it. Where's the attack? What attack are you under? Now, the last thing I want to add, maybe this is a little petty. But I did want to show you the ticket prices for this event. So to give you the full perspective, this is happening September 28th, Dallas, Texas, at Prestonwood Baptist Church. It's a massive mega church. I had to go and see how much is she charging for this, to see essentially 4 speakers and 1 music artist. It's a one-day event. Actually, I'll do this. Here's the schedule. Okay. On Friday, September 27th, there is a VIP dinner with Allie Stuckey. I'll get to that in a minute. But if you're just a generic attender, if you just bought the general admission ticket, here's what you get. 9 o'clock in the morning, doors open. 9:30, opening remarks. 9:45, session 1. 10:45, session 2. Lunch, 11:30. You have Oh, looks like you have a 2 hour and 15-minute break. So you come back at 1:45 for session 3. You come back, and then 2:30 is session 4. 3:45 p.m. is closing comments. So what, this is a 9:30 to 3 o'clock? What is that? This is like a 6-hour event. If you add in lunch, it's really a 4-hour event. You're going to see 4 people speak for about 45 minutes each. And then you're going to hear someone sing some songs. Okay. So here's the ticket prices. This is just, I couldn't believe this. First, you have the general admission. That is $150 for what is essentially a 4-hour event. Plus, of course, your travel and lodging. Now, I will say, I know that events take money. I know it takes money to rent a building, to get your tech. If you're going to record it, live stream, I know it can add up. So I get that people have to charge some kind of rate that will either recoup their money or hopefully profit some money. I totally get that. In my opinion, $150 is still pretty steep for an event that is this short. To give you perspective, when I went to Exiles in Babylon conference a couple of months ago, that was a 2.5 day event. There were about 30 speakers, 25 speakers. I think the ticket was $245, which is much more reasonable. So $150 is pretty steep. Okay, then we have a $500 breakfast package. You can join Allie Stuckey for breakfast on Saturday, and then, of course, you can attend the event on Saturday as well. So you have this early VIP breakfast thing. For $1,000, you can buy the second VIP package. Or I'm sorry, the VIP package they call it. It's called, so it's general admission, breakfast package, $1,000 VIP package. Join Allie Beth Stuckey for dinner on Friday, September 27th. Join Allie Stuckey for breakfast on the 28th, and then attend the event. Okay, so to get dinner and breakfast with Allie and attend the event, $1,000 a person. And then you have what they're calling is the premium all access package. $150 for the general admission, $500 for the breakfast package, $1,000 for the VIP package, $5,000 for the premium all access package. What does that get you? Well, it gets you dinner, which you could get for $1,000. It gets you breakfast, which you could already get for $500. And now it gives you, quote, enjoy backstage access throughout the event. That's the only additional item. $5,000. I'm sorry. That is outlandish. I did look this up. You can buy a premium box seat ticket to see Taylor Swift, which includes a private chef, for $2,500 at Wembley Stadium in London. So you and a friend for $5,000 can see Taylor Swift with a private chef in a private box seat. Or one of you can go to a 4-hour event in Texas to see Allie Stuckey talk along with Lisa Childers and Rosario Butterfield. It's unbelievable. I would love your thoughts on this. I think $5,000 is insanity. I think it's ridiculous. But maybe you have a different experience. Maybe you have a different perspective. I don't know. I would love your thoughts on this video. I would love your thoughts on these comments. I would love your thoughts on that ticket price. Is it too much? You can shoot me an email. You can put it in the comments. Thanks for watching, friends. Yeah. Give this channel a like, or give the video a like. Give the channel a subscribe. If you're listening on podcasts, give it a download. Talk to y'all later on. See ya.